I'm challenging myself to make a game based on every letter of the alphabet only using free assets. To start the series off, I'll be making a game starting with the letter A. I kinda just yoinked this idea from Baji, but instead of being a madman like him and doing this challenge every day for every letter, I decided to go at my own pace and try and get this done within a week. I suck at coming up with game ideas, so I had my good friend ChatGPT to help me with some suggestions. I asked him to give me game ideas that revolved around the letter A. Eventually I got two words that I could combine together, and that is how I got the title Axe Avoider. I knew I had to keep this scope small if I wanted to do it within a week. So I came up with the idea where it shoots a bunch of axe projectiles randomly at any direction. The player on the other hand would have to dodge the axes by moving left and right. The next thing I had on my list was to figure out if I wanted it 2D or 3D. As someone who always uses 2D in short game challenges, I wanted to switch it up and try 3D for a change. I went ahead in the Unity asset store and looked for free 3D models I can use as my enemy, player, and of course the axe. I stumbled across Blink's free male character and bear and thought this was the perfect hero versus villain boss battle. I based the environment, axe, effects, UI to tailor towards those two characters. Looking through the demo scene, I knew this would be a perfect spot for the boss battle to happen. I slapped the bear and player into the scene, and bada bing bada boom, the player was able to move around the bear by pressing the A and D keys. Looking at this made me realize how cool would it be to have the player levitate with a cape, kind of like a superhero. I then opened up Blender and made myself a very basic cape, and adding bones to it so it's able to run with physics. I exported it into Unity and added the cloth component to it. This component just simulates the cloth physics and gives realistic movement of fabric-like materials. As for the animation, however, I did pull a cheeky one and used this animation asset I previously bought to give it that superhero feel. It was only a placeholder for while testing, since I wanted it to look cool when making the game. Don't worry, I ended up using free animations before publishing the game. The next thing I needed to add was the axe spawning of the bear in multiple directions. The first attempt in making the axe throwing was not the best.
Brother, what's that?
Eventually I coded the part where it would go off random angle from 20 degrees to 35, and I also added a spin to it to make it look more scary to dodge. I was quite happy with how it turned out, so I added way more spawns to make it more chaotic. I was pretty unsure with how I wanted to add the trail to the axe because when I was testing it, it dropped my frames by a lot. Some days it would work fine, but other days it would be unplayable. This was the asset that I got for the trail, and it looked so good when it was attached to the axe when flying, despite the performance issue. Since the player was sort of a superhero, I thought it would be nice for him to attack the bear using laser eyes. I added a line render and programmed it to spawn from the player's position to the targeted enemy. This happened every time I held down the left mouse button, having the players fight against the bear instead of just dodging the axes left and right. Shortly after, I realized I still needed to add the enemy and player health mechanics. This wasn't too hard and didn't take too much time. I called the enemy Papa Bear and attached the free icon it came with the asset. As for the health, they were just basic sliders for the time being, but I knew I would eventually have to come back and style them up later. I went with this particular asset to help me with changing up the UI for the game. Other small improvements I added was an animation switch on the bear to sort of indicate to the player that he was about to spawn the axe projectiles. It does a stand-up animation and slams the ground, and then the axe starts spawning. I felt like it was a nice touch-up instead of just having the bear sit there and the player would have to guess when to prepare to dodge. With the game scene pretty much done, I just needed to set up the menu and control scene. I'm not sure why, but I was never really a huge fan of making menus. It seemed quite tedious to do, so I wanted to try something different and make it a bit more fun and interactive. Using the same game scene, I made it so every time you hover between each panel, whether it be to play the game, go to the controls menu, or quit the game, the player would lerp to a new position and have the characters in an animation or pose. And when you hover over the quit button, it would zoom back to the player, but the animation would be different. I would have him playing a crying animation, which I thought was pretty funny. I got this particular animation from Mixamo. As for the title itself, this was entirely made by AI by using a tool called Audiogram. It has to be one of the best AI tools when generating text. All I had to do was ask, can you create me a main menu video game text logo with the name Axe Avoider? It obviously took me a while to get the ones with the color I like, but in the end, it does look pretty legit. All I had to do now was slap it into the main menu and control scenes. I was almost at the end of making the game, and I usually add my audio last since I feel like it doesn't take too much time. I use sound effects from this site called My Instance for the laser eyes, axe throwing, the player taking damage, and the button clicks. As for the music, I went to itch.io and found this sound pack made by Evil Duck. This music pack was made for a game jam, and I was really drawn to its style. All that's left was to go back to the player and redo the animations. I went back to the asset store and searched for animations that I think would suit a levitating hero. Honestly, at this point I didn't really care what it looked like, so I went ahead with this mage animation pack. I switched out my hero animations with free ones, and bada bing bada boom, the game was complete. It does look a bit wonky, but it doesn't really bother me. I was just glad that the game was finished. I built and exported the game, uploaded it on itch.io, and called the challenge a success. You can go ahead and play the game yourself and make sure to comment down what game I should make for the letter B. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!